Hey, everybody, I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. Thank you for joining our monthly CS Mastermind webcast, where we bring together professionals from across the customer experience ecosystem, from customer success managers to support specialists and everybody in between. Today's session is brought to you by Success Coaching, where we've helped more than 40,000 customer-facing professionals from almost 100 countries develop the skills they need to excel. Whether you're in customer success, support, or any customer-facing role, you can find the right program for your learning style. You can find all the details of our offerings on our website, successcoaching.co, or in the chat, where Ashley will provide links, or has provided links, and any coupon codes that we are currently offering. CS Mastermind is all about real-world expertise, no theoretical frameworks or abstract concepts here. We dive deep into practical advice and actionable insights that you can apply immediately in your role. Today, we're exploring how support teams can use emotional intelligence and active listening to handle tough conversations and leave customers feeling heard and valued. But some quick housekeeping before we begin. We are recording this session and we will share the replay next week. Please use the Q&A button for questions. The most upvoted ones will get priority during our discussion. We'll hit questions at about 20 minutes to the top of the hour. LinkedIn Live viewers, feel free to post your questions directly in the comments. We have somebody monitoring that, and they will relay your questions to the group. For smooth sailing, please keep the chat window for commentary only. Use the Q&A button for questions. All right. Now, I'm excited to introduce our fantastic panelists who will be sharing their insights with us today. As usual, I will let them introduce themselves to you all in alphabetical order, and we'll start with Bukola.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bukola Willoby. I'm the head of customer success here at PiggyTech, the parent company of PiggyVest, Pocket, and PiggyVest Business in Nigeria. I started my career as a customer success representative at one of the oldest banks in Nigeria, where I handled customers' complaints, working customers, related with the BSM and every other cross-functional department. Following that, I moved to FinTech, where I also started as a customer success rep and then built the team from 4 to currently 60 people, and we built customer loyalty and trust to over 5 million customers here in Nigeria. What else? Yeah, it's just really been a great journey, right? Because I moved on from being a customer success rep to a product specialist to a customer success manager, and now I'm the group head of customer success at PiggyVest. So thank you.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've had a good career run. And I love that you're joining us from Nigeria. I think it's great that we have a global audience. We have a global perspective here. Business is done differently in other areas of the world, right? So it's great that we're going to be everybody's exposed to that. So thanks, Bukola, for making time for us today. On to Gavin.
Hey, everybody. I'm Gavin Wilson. I'm the Senior Manager of Value Delivery for US West for a company called JFrog out here in Silicon Valley, California. My team partners with about 150 enterprise customers driving real outcomes, really reducing churn, accelerating value, and building trust for customers of a key player in the DevSecOps space. Before this, I built Snowflake's revenue-generating, high-touch success/support hybrid, and we really grew that from 0 to $43 million in net revenue. My time commanding Anglo teams in the United States Marine Corps actually taught me that empathy under pressure isn't necessarily optional. It's really how you win loyalty when it matters most. And happy to be taking part in this panel and learning from my other panelists.
Empathy, Marines? Empathy? No, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting take. I'm going to be really interested in hearing more about that experience. Thanks, Gavin. And last but not least, Marissa.
Hey, everybody. My name is Marissa Barcza, and I serve as the Vice President of Go-to-Market and Growth at FluentStream. I lead our sales, marketing, account management, and partner success teams here. And we provide cloud-based communication technology that really helps small and medium-sized businesses stay connected and really deliver that outstanding experience we've all come to expect as not only consumers, but also the experiences that a lot of enterprise companies can deliver. We try and make our small to medium-sized businesses of America be able to do the same. I started my career in consulting. I spent about 8 years really leading large-scale retail transformation efforts. And I learned a lot about listening and empathy when I was working with those big retailers. They have razor thin margins and high expectations as well. So I learned a lot in that experience. But then after being a road warrior for so long, I pivoted into tech leadership, primarily in the B2B SaaS space. So I've had a few stops along the way. But like I said, now I'm at FluentStream, really driving that organic growth for our 6,000 plus customers and the new ones that come along every single day. I'm really, from like a leadership perspective, I love turning customer insights into business outcomes. So I'm a data junkie. And I love having this conversation about empathy because it often is perceived as a soft skill when in reality, those hard numbers show up time and time again when empathy plays a major role in the conversations with customers. And then on a personal side, I'm from Austin, Texas. I live here with my husband, our 2 dogs. I love staying active, read a lot. If you have reading recommendations, would love to see those in the chat window. And yeah, I go to as many concerts as I can. So always looking for new musicians as well to check out.
That is one of my favorite parts of Austin is the live music scene. I haven't been there in years, but when I used to go out there regularly, I was always looking for some sort of live music venue, something interesting to watch, to see. You know, I'm a big jam band kind of guy. So, you know, the Dead, of course, and for people who have been on this, have joined us before, know that I'm a big Deadhead. There's you know, some of that iconography in the background there, you know, and bands like String Cheese Incident and Goose and stuff like that. But as far as reading goes, I just finished In the Woods, Tara French, if you're into mysteries. And this is an old one, but Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. Big Stephen King fan.
Oh man, I just started a new Stephen King book this week.
Oh, which one was that?
Yeah. I just started Holly. It's the 3rd in a series.
Yeah, I haven't read the beginning of that series. Also, have you read Fairy Tale yet from Stephen King?
No, I'm on the wait list at the library, but I'm waiting for it.
Fairy Tale, awesome.
I've heard it's incredible. Yes. Long wait list for it, but yeah.
Yeah, it was. I read that 2 years ago during vacation. I read Mr. Mercedes just a couple weeks ago when we were in Mexico. It's nice. Really the only time, for some reason, the only time I can really sit down and read a book is when I'm on vacation. But I like taking the physical book with me, you know, and actually leaving it where I'm staying for the next person. So I feel like I accomplished something. Hey, I left a book. That means I finished it. So, anyways, I digress. All right, so let's get to our topic. Here is something that might make some of you uncomfortable. I believe most companies are creating their own demanding customers through poor processes, through confusing policies and systems that force customers to repeat themselves multiple times. And this is actually hits home for me personally, for those of you that have kept up with some of my trials and tribulations with my home warranty company that I posted on LinkedIn about a month ago. It was such a frustrating situation and experience to get support. We spend millions training support teams in empathy and emotional intelligence. And this was a perfect example of a support team that didn't spend anything on emotional intelligence or empathy, but we're essentially teaching people to be really good at apologizing for the problems that the organization created in the first place. And as a receiver of that, as somebody who is on the other end of that, that's an incredibly frustrating thing to experience, right? So let me ask you this. Are we putting a Band-Aid on a bigger wound, right? How much of what we call difficult customer behavior is actually justified frustration with broken customer experiences? And once again, case in point, my experience with American Home Warranty, which, by the way, I would not recommend to anybody. Who wants to jump in on this?
I'll kick us off. I can get us started. So in my experience, I'd say 100% agree. I think it's controversial and I think it's true that we often create some of the challenging problems. And something that we've done at my company that really opened up my eyes to where those frustrations come from is when I really started looking at first call resolution versus not. And what I really see often is on that first call, even if a customer's system is broken, can't log in, the most frustrating situation you can identify, they're not mad out the gate, right? Like they're like, oh, this is annoying. This is frustrating. I'm very fortunate too. My team is full US based, real people. We answer the phone. Our call tree is literally 3 options of, do you need help? Do you need sales? Or do you need billing? That's it. And then you get a person. There's no type in your account name, tell us what your name, all of that we just do with a person on the phone. So I am lucky in that regard. I think sometimes I get most frustrated when I can't just tell someone what's going on because I have to authenticate 28 times. But even still, when a customer gets to a person, we figure out what the problem is. The frustration comes when they have to call again and again. And the actual problem isn't identified. We have a complex problem. We have a complex solution because it's robust. It inherently will be complex, especially sometimes we're working with owner operators that might not be as technically savvy as my best engineers on the team. And they might say, my phone's broken. It's like, well, is your phone broken or is it your internet? Is it actually like the plug? There could be a million things. And if we're not curious out the gate, we're not going to be able to fix the problem. And then they're going to have to call back. And I think that's really where frustration can stem from more than anything, is not finding that root cause. And then the second thing is sometimes we can't solve it on the first call. And with that, it's really critical to set expectations of when we'll be able to fix it or when we'll give them an update. Saying we'll get back to you isn't helpful because the customer might think getting back to me is within an hour. And when we say getting back to you, it's probably 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on the severity and our SLA. And so being really clear, and again, I'm a sales leader as well, and there's this concept called upfront contract. And I think this applies so well to support teams as well. Coming in together and saying, okay, let's set expectations of what realistic is for all of us here. We understand you're frustrated. What will this look like to be successful for you? Okay, we can't hit that expectation. What if we go with an alternative that's a little bit more realistic for everybody involved? And if you can set that contract up front, customers know when they're getting a call back and they can resolve the issue more quickly.
Well, you got to set that expectation, but you also have to be prepared to follow through on that expectation, because there's definitely more frustrating than setting that expectation and not following through on it, which was definitely one of my pain points with this organization that I referred to previously. As you can imagine, I'm probably the worst person to screw with when it comes to expectation management, because I am all over that shit. Right. I am not. I am the one person who voices, the 1 out of 25 who actually will tell you how they really feel. But Gavin or Bukola, you got anything to add?
Definitely. I just want to piggyback on what Marissa said. Apart from fixing the problem, I think it's very important to also fix the process. I have like a perfect example. So I reached out to a vendor in Nigeria trying to fix something, and I spoke to the first representative. They asked me for every detail. I gave it to them. Came back after an hour asking for an update. And then they're asking me for every detail I previously gave the first representative.
So
I was
frustrating.
so pissed. And then I realized there was no personalization at all, nothing. Everything, I was speaking to a bot. And it brings me to, we all talk about AI and how we need to do more automation. And I said everything. I went to their office the following morning, and then I realized the problem. And within 5 minutes of getting to their office, everything was fixed. Just that personalization. So sometimes I don't think it's the product that is the problem. I think fixing the entire process also would help, because if you change the process to say, okay, from the onset, I'm trying to understand what this customer is feeling, and I'm not just going to understand it, I'm going to also prefer a solution. It makes the entire process much easier. So I feel like a lot of people need to incorporate the personalization from the onset rather than after getting all the other details.
I love that. That's great call out. Gavin, what do you got to add?
So take that to another level too, and do a little bit of proactive work. As success professionals, it's all about know your customer. You really want to understand kind of the environment, the architecture, and the configuration of how your customer is leveraging your product. But not just having access to like a sales engineer's or an account executive's lucid chart. You really want to understand the evolution of how that lucid chart may change over the course of the contract term. When you have an understanding of the different initiatives that they may have in place, you as a success professional then have an opportunity to be able to kind of separate the chaos and the noise from what's really substantial and strategically relevant information to a customer as they plan to grow. When you provide that level of information that is relevant to their use cases, it really increases the value of you as an advocate and as that trusted advisor to the customers going forward. Doing this also when you document all of this information in like Salesforce or ServiceNow or something like that, you can then provide that information and have it readily accessible by your support engineers, your product team that may end up doing some of the more deep dive investigation. With all of that information at everybody's fingertips, you're minimizing time to resolution.
And this is why, and I know that Marissa, your team has gone through our customer success. Your customer success team has gone through our customer success training. But this is one of the reasons why, or one of the advantages of doing success plans, and there being one-page success plans, because that's not just something for the customer success manager or the customer, but it's also valuable to the support team. It's valuable to your senior executives. It's valuable to your product team to understand where the customer's at in their customer journey, what they care about, what's important to them. So this is I love the process discussion. Bukola, thank you for bringing that up. When you encounter a difficult customer, and I know you had your own personal experience here, but when you encounter a difficult customer, how often do you find the root cause traces back to a company process or a policy failure, rather than the customer being unreasonable?
In most cases, I would say probably 75% of the time.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's a significant.
Yes.
Significant.
Hence why I said you just need to change the entire process.
So is that just bad planning? Is it the maturity? I mean, I know you're in kind of in a growing country, in a country that's going through a lot of maturation. Is that a matter of that, or is it just, is there something more to it, you think?
So I think it's because a lot of companies see customer success as below the ladder, as opposed to the forefront of the company, which is what we are trying to change now. If most companies see customer success as they are the face of the company, they have to get everything in check, it will make a difference. But here in Nigeria, it's more like, you know what, it's just customer success and it's just there, right? They don't do that in my company because we've changed that. But a lot of companies in Nigeria need to actually incorporate customer success into their system and see it as what it is.
Well, it's not just Nigeria, unfortunately. It's pretty much everywhere. I mean, we're seeing it, whether it's success or support. And when we say customer success, folks, we're talking about everybody in the customer that customer support ecosystem. But there are plenty of companies in North America and in the US that think of the customer success and support teams as just a necessary evil. Although 80% of a company's lifetime value comes from your existing customers. So you would think that they would care more about it. Marissa, Gavin, what do you got to add?
I'm in pretty good agreement with this. I find that much of the customer frustration just comes in repeating process and repeating the information that they've been asked time and time again. So if what we can do is really suss out that root cause and find ways, not just in the here and now with the immediate support case that may come up or incident that may come up. It's really understanding. It's kind of, you got to break down the layers of the onion for the individual problem statement for the customer. Company I'm with right now, JFrog, is absolutely fantastic because we're able to leverage AI to actually take a look at similar support cases, leveraging AI to determine, hey, are there common causations here that we can make mitigation and correction step recommendations to the customer in order to get past what seems to be a recurrent problem.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than shooting ourselves in the foot, right? It was something that I used to do all the time. I used to push the other teams in my organizations. It's actually one of the reasons that I just finally threw my hands up and said, "Forget this! I'm going to go run my own company." Was that I had other leaders that I was working with, the executive staff, that refused to do that kind of that post-mortem and figure out, okay, where did we screw up and how can we avoid this from happening again?
Yeah. And I was going to add in a strong agreement to both, and hope that one day the tides will truly turn worldwide for customer success to be seen as the forefront.
Right.
But I think there's also a piece of this where the root cause traces back to company process, policy, or the product itself. And to your point, looking at root cause, looking at cases, and getting proactive with the product team as well. And I'm not saying new bells and whistles. Our product team is awesome at pushing features, but sometimes it's simple things like login, like forgotten password being really visible, right? Like some users or customers might not log in all the time. If their product just works in the background, we have a mobile app, for example. How often do you really log into your mobile apps, right? SSO is really key for that. We've all as individuals have gotten really used to single sign-on with Google or whatever the case may be. So really focusing on how we can make the process and experience really seamless and friction-free for those areas where frustration occurs. Because again, it's when you don't expect to have an issue that makes it the most frustrating of issues, right? Like if you have a washing machine that breaks, like you don't expect your washing machine to break. So when it does, it's super frustrating. I just had to have a new washer dryer installed because ours broke, and it was such a frustrating experience because you just expect these things to work. Logging in, you expect it to work. And so I think that there's also that closed loop, but then getting back to customers. This is something we've started doing a lot more of, is tagging cases, tagging conversations, logging activities a little more closely with our success teams and other customer facing teams to indicate what features they were talking about or what issues they were having. So we can send emails and say, hey, great news. We know you had login challenges in the past. We just rolled out SSO, for example. We're working on 2FA right now. We know it's going to cause frustration, right? Two-factor authentication will be frustrating. It's far more secure and better. We need to tell customers it's coming, and then we need to let them know that we did it for them.
Yeah, 100%. But also the tagging, also, once again, back to Gavin's point, and with AI, it makes it even easier. It gives us the ability to recognize, hey, we're seeing some patterns here, right? So, with
AI, like transcription has become huge for us. You don't have to have teams manually tagging and tracking. It's now transcribing calls. It's transcribing sentiment. It's tagging keywords. It's gotten so much easier. It's amazing.
Yeah, using tools like Gong, using tools like we use update.ai. They're great tools to, and we can focus on having that conversation, making a connection with the customer. Really understanding their issue, and also the emotional component that comes with that. Because when I had my situation with my fridge, and by the way, my fridge was I did not have a working fridge in my house for 20 days.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and it went through, I gave them all the information they asked for. They sent out the wrong repair person. They sent somebody who knew how to fix a lawnmower engine to fix a jet engine. I mean, it was a complete and utter goat rodeo. And when I got on the call to escalate it, the person who I escalated to was a leader, lacked empathy, lacked any sort. He was just following a script, and that infuriated me even more. I'm like, oh my God, be a human being, right? And that's a combination of either of not having training and also not having the it's not being trained and just not having the capacity, whether it's time or ability to connect with your customer and kind of show some, express some empathy, show some concern. What's the most ridiculous thing your organization has asked customers to do, and how did that impact the support interactions that followed? Anybody got a story about that? Marissa, you got one? Yeah.
Sure, I can kick it off. So I don't know that I would say this is ridiculous, but I think it was perceived as such, and perception is reality, right?
Exactly.
So we recently had a big group of customers that we migrated onto an updated version of the platform, and they were provided a lot of resources. But as we know, customers don't read emails or watch your beautiful YouTube videos or read your documentation ever. There will always be that customer, right?
100%.
And so it's really hard to train customers, but we had to migrate them because we wanted them to have the best features, and we needed to deprecate the old and, right? Like, this is a very common scenario. And so we were doing our best to communicate, but alas, it did really cause a lot of frustrations for a lot of customers, because the time came when we migrated them and something didn't go as planned. And so what I always remind my team is change is hard. Even good change is hard. Change is really hard for customers. And we're a bit of a utility product in that we do provide phone, texting, and like video conferencing, like Zoom products. So it's a pretty standard, like you expect it to just work kind of product. And when that change happens, it's really hard for our customers, and it does create a lot of frustration. So we did get a spike in support cases. And what happens when a spike happens, when you have a US-based team that's picking up the phone, is call times get a little longer, wait times get a little longer, tickets get, we'd still hit our SLAs, but SLAs are kind of long by some customers' expectations. And so it did create a little frustration. That said, we were able to bring together a lot of other teams to jump in and support. And I was really proud of our company for doing that. We didn't just leave it on the shoulders of our support team and all of us go home at night kind of thing. We all jumped in. We were all working on cases. We were proactively calling customers. We were doing our best to really help get over this hump that we kind of created for ourselves. But it was hard. And it's, we're still feeling some of those ripples, and we still will, because change is hard.
Yeah. Change is hard. Bukola, Gavin, anything? What about you?
I'm going to plead the fifth on this one, just because. I think the thing is not necessarily to flag like ridiculous activities or ridiculous asks or whatnot, but it's to piggyback on what Marissa was talking about. Look, the key is it's all about learning, and this gets into more philosophy than anything else. If you can take any the brick wall you come against, any time you trip yourself up in a professional environment, if you can leverage that as a point of personal education to learn what not to do in the future. And to be a great teammate, own that and point that out to your teammates is, hey, you know what, guys, I, put my foot in my mouth in this conversation. Hey, check this gong call out because I really loused it up. But this is what I learned from it. And this is how you going forward can, circumvent them landmines.
This is what used to frustrate the most out of me. When I was in one of my last full-time gigs, was that my direct boss, who was a co-founder and the COO of the company, would say, we don't have time to do root cause analysis, but just think of how well your team's firefighting. I'm like, really? Yeah, and all that firefighting is going to burn my team out. Yeah. But what do you care? I'm the one that's going to have to deal with it. Yeah. Bukola, you going to plead the fifth as well, or you got something you want to share before we move on to the next question?
I think I'm with Gavin on this.
That's fine. That's cool. I get it. And just a reminder, folks, we'll get to questions here in about 10 minutes. But if you have any questions, please use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Or if you see a question on that list that you would love to get answered, as we do go based off of most upvotes, use that upvote functionality. All right, so then let's switch from pointing out potentially ridiculous things to, if you could fix 3 organizational issues that you either see at your current company or previous companies that create the most customer frustration, what would they be?
I'll take this one.
All right.
I think first, eliminating duplicate effort. That is absolutely key. And that's duplicate effort across cross-functional teams. Secondly, in order to do that, pre-align teams before customer touch points. Snowflake, we were really big on becoming a seamless enhancement to an existing account team. Given account executive is still going to be running the show and going to still be owning the relationship and the renewals, but you're also going to have your sales engineers, professional services, and priority support coming on board, where all 4 facets of this enhanced account team can really help drive greater ROI for customers. Third, we need to systemize internal empathy. Really, the key is if we can systemize this by not just pointing out ways where your team can start leveraging empathy, but as a lead, you provide empathy to your people as well. You want to help kind of inspire them to be thinking along the lines of emotional intelligence. We want to be 3 and 4 chess steps ahead of the game. We want to be crafting our emails and our content that's going to either set up the ability for that customer to ask the question that you want to lead them with, or you want to circumvent any problematic questions that may come up. So those 3 things: eliminate duplicate effort, pre-align teams prior to touch points, and then systemize internal empathy.
I like to systemize internal empathy. You know, Sir Richard Branson famously said, actually, my customers aren't number one. My people are number one. And so if I treat my people well and systemize internal empathy, that's going to flow down to my customers, right? The better I treat my people, the more empathetic I am with them, the more empathetic, the better they're going to treat my customers. I love that. Mm-hmm. Marissa, Bukola, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. Firstly, I would change the prioritization list from the product team. I feel like there's some issues that come up that could easily be resolved, but because there is a list and on the list of priorities, that issue is below, it becomes a problem. Something that could have been fixed within 20 minutes for like 5 people extends and it becomes a blown out issue. And then we now start running helter-skelter. So definitely the prioritization list. And then the second one would be better synchronization between other cross-functional teams. So not just customer success and marketing or customer success and product and engineering. Other teams needs to be involved, from compliance to accounting to reconciliation, every other team. And lastly, better empathy across board. So empathy isn't just for the customer success team alone. It needs to be everybody in the company. The company needs to be customer centric. Every single person in the company needs to understand that whatever they are doing, whatever step they are taking is for both their customers, the internal customers and the external customers. And like Gavin rightly said, you can pour from an empty basket, right? But you can pour from an empty cup. So it's very important to lead by example. So from the leaders to the team leads to the managers, every single person needs to be very empathetic, and whatever they do, they need to use that in all their conversation and every decision that's been made. Marissa?
Awesome. Marissa?
Yeah, I think I'm going to piggyback off like a couple of all of yours, but the way that I had thought about it was, the one thing I'll highlight here is I think it's always important to remember, like, whoever is talking to an external person is the company. We are the face of the company. And I think that it's important to recognize that when a customer calls you, they don't care what your title is and what your role is. They have something they want an answer to. It's not even an issue. They just want an answer. And so I think making sure that the whole company, accounting, like you said, I love that you brought up accounting. I think like HR and accounting is so important in this as well, are essentially trained as like tier 1 support. So like most things we can all fix. We are all trained on how to get a couple very basic billing issues for customer billing issues fixed for them, right? Like we know the basics enough. So no matter what phone number they find, because they will find your phone number, it is amazing. They will find you, they will email you, and you can go ahead and just say, great, we can get that set up for you. I can fix that for you. Because I think too often it's the handoffs. It's the, oh, thank you I'm going to send you over here. And then you have to repeat yourself, right? And so getting that baseline as an organization of like, we all know how to answer 90% of the questions would be like a huge win.
I think that's a great call out that empathy needs to be spread across the entire company. Right? Everybody needs to be thinking customer success. Some of our most forward-thinking customers in our training program are putting everybody in a customer-facing role and people outside of customer-facing roles on some type of our training program so that they understand from why customer success is so important. Yeah, I'm not addressing customer issues on a daily basis, but you know what? I've been trained and I understand how to think customer first, right? Why this is important. Because your customer is making a decision whether or not they're going to continue doing business with you based off of every single interaction they have with you, whether that's somebody in a support role or success role or accounting or finance, whoever, right? One of my early companies where I rolled out one of the early customer success teams in the industry, we actually, and this was very basic back then. We're talking 2008. Okay, it's probably a long time ago. Really at the beginning of customer success, but we made it part of everybody's comp plan. Net Promoter Score, NPS, was part of everybody's comp plan. There was a component in your variable component that was tied to the NPS company-wide, from the CEO all the way down to the part-time person who was working the front desk, because we wanted to make sure everybody was customer focused. And incentives drive behavior, right? Okay, we got a bunch of questions. I got one more question, then we're going to get to these questions in the chat. So once again, folks, upvote the ones that you want to hear answers to early. One last question I have from my panelists: how do you balance being genuinely empathetic with customers while also being honest about your company's role in creating the problem?
So empathy I read somewhere that empathy without accountability is hollow, right?
Oh, I love that.
And I think I recently, who was it? It was, I'm trying to remember the name of the author, but he had come up with the trust equation. Google the trust equation, okay? And to
Simon
him,
Sinek, maybe?
I don't believe so. But in any event, the equation is this: trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy. All of that divided by self-orientation. So what this means is the lower the self-orientation, the higher the trust. And empathy lives in that denominator. So really the key to this, as a customer success manager, technical success manager, support account manager, whatever you want to call it, you need to be credible. You need to have that technical acumen. You need to understand the product. You need to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk. We've all heard that, right? Customers rely on that, because if they're talking to you about a problem that they have and it's falling on deaf ears, or it's just not understood, you lose out on credibility. Reliability. I hate to say this, but support and success never sleep. I can't tell you how many times I, as both an individual contributor and a manager, have spent late Friday nights going into Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings working on an incident or an escalation for a customer. We need to make sure that what we're doing is putting customers first and try to make ourselves as reliable as possible in order to address those needs when they need us most. Lastly is the intimacy piece. We need to have intimate knowledge of how the customer is leveraging our product and, like I said earlier, how they plan to evolve over time. If we do all of that, we divide it by a smaller sense of self-orientation where we are putting the needs of customer first instead of our own needs. That is all going to increase trust in the customer's eyes. And I think that is that level of empathy that's going to really help a customer believe at their core that they really have an advocate at Snowflake or JFrog or whatever company.
Love that. Yeah. There's actually a couple of different references to empathy without accountability is hollow. But it's so true. It's so true. Marissa, Bukola, you have anything to add before we jump to audience questions?
I will co-sign on Gavin. Keep us moving along.
Nothing from me.
Awesome. All right. So let's get to some questions. I like ask my analysts to take a look at that Q&A list and for about 60 seconds, see if there's anything on there that you want to jump in on. Hit that answer live button, and I'll defer to you first. Otherwise, we'll just start going through them. Our first question comes from Ola. Ola, thank you for joining us again. I see Ola here quite a bit, so appreciate you making the time and appreciate your question. Ola asks, how do you balance empathy and assertiveness when a customer demands something you cannot deliver?
That's a very interesting question. I kind of have a very simple answer for that. There's always an alternative to every issue. There's always a solution. So if your company's policy is this and you cannot satisfy or provide the required action for your customer, there is always an alternative. The best you can do is, oh, I'm sorry this is happening, or I understand how frustrating this can be, but here is what I can do to help you. So there is always an alternative.
Yeah, it's the old it's the no but equation, right? If you can't do it, it's the no but. No,
exactly.
I can't do what you're asking, but here's what I can do, right? Exactly. And we talk about this in one of our training courses about how you bring the customer closer into your reasoning and help explain to them, okay, here's why we can't do that, but you need to kind of partner that up with, okay, but here's what we can do, right? The no 100%. But.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marissa, Gavin, anything to add? Any other ideas on how to address something like that?
I think sometimes it helps if you're talking to a customer to pivot them out of what they think the solution is and figure out what they're trying to solve for.
Right.
They don't know what they don't know.
That's where like 5 whys types of techniques come in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Some like a little mantra of my own is that I heard along the way, but I remind myself is the shortest word can lead to the longest answer. So just saying why, and then also just that power of the pause. Just say why, right? We often want to fill up the space, and so does the customer. So say why. Why do you feel like that? And then just stop talking.
Yeah.
If no one's talking, they'll start talking. They always do. And with that, you can really get down to they're asking for something, but in reality, you have 4 different options you can deliver to them that would solve that. They just didn't maybe know those existed, or they hadn't thought of it in that way.
Or you failed, or you as an organization failed on the change management piece of this, getting them to understand that the way this was something that I dealt with full frontal in that transition from on-prem enterprise software to SaaS, right? You had a bunch of people that were also going through that transition early in the early days of SaaS that didn't connect the dots between, okay, well, what we used to do is going to change in what we now are doing because you have that low barrier to entry. What comes along with it is we have to adjust the way we do things. Mm-hmm. Right. And that was one of the things that I used to coach my teams on all the time. I said, when a customer is asking for something, you got to use the whys. You got to peel things back, because 9 times out of 10, what you're going to find is that we actually can do what they want to do, just not the way that they're used to doing it. So we have to kind of redirect them. Hey, we can get you to what you want, where you want to go, right? But it's just going to be different than what you're used to. Mm-hmm. Gavin, you got anything to add?
I'm 100% in agreement on all of that. Advocacy awesome. Is a two-way street. So that is, perfect.
Awesome. Excellent. Ola, thank you for the question. Thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Our next question, let's see, let me refresh this. Our next question comes from Bruno. Bruno asks, how would you handle a situation where your customer is actually right with their feedback, but you do know that your product org will only have this on the roadmap in more than 6 months? How do you keep your customer engaged in this time period when you know it's a big frustration for them? And it looked like, Gavin, you wanted to jump in first.
Oh, I'll take this one. In a word, honesty. You have to be honest, and you have to be upfront, and you have to let them know, hey, this isn't on current quarter roadmap. It may be 6 months out, and if it's 6 months out, it might actually get extended even further. Now, where I know that that's not the right answer that you like to hear, because I know I wouldn't want to hear it, let me see what I can do about coordinating a discussion with the project manager, designers, engineers that are working on this specific ask, and see if we can actually coordinate 1, maybe 2 design meetings where you can actually bring voice of customer into the inner workings of whatever company you're working for, insert company, and then you can actually have a say in further development of our product. Given it doesn't answer the needs for the customer right then and there, however, it allows them to feel a sense of developmental ownership in the product, which again increases perception of the brand.
I also want to piggyback on this from what Bukola said. There's typically an answer to everything. So is there a temporary workaround? So we had a situation ourselves where a customer was asking for a particular report. Our report we want to improve our reporting infrastructure, but it's probably a 6 month, 6 months before we get to there. So what did I do? I had one of my support people on a monthly basis run this set of reports for this customer and deliver it to them. And I said, okay, I can't offer this through our reporting right now through the platform, but what I can commit to is I'm going to have Sam on a monthly basis run these reports for you on this day of the month and send them to you. Will that work? They were freaking ecstatic. Like, that's awesome. That's all we need, right? They were happy about it. So there's always a workaround. The other thing that I would say, Bruno, that you probably want to look at is this a pattern? Are there other customers that are experiencing this thing? If this is a pain, if this is a challenge for one customer, in all likelihood, there may be other customers. Mm-hmm. So then what you want to do is do some digging and figure out, are there other customers that are experiencing this problem? And if this problem or this limitation, and if there are, okay, now, if you can gather up all that information and show that there's a cohort of customers that are experiencing this problem, and you can attach a revenue number to that. Hey, there's this cohort of customers that make up X amount of revenue that are getting really frustrated with this limitation, and tell a story, right? Then build the narrative. I mean, it takes some time, but if it's really important, right, it's something that you should do. Build this narrative around, here's the problem they're experiencing and why it's important to this cohort of customers. And by the way, this is how much revenue that could be at risk. Then you take that to the product team, go to the product team and say, I think you need to reassess where this sits in the product roadmap. right? So I think that Gavin, that's a great strategy for him. But if this is, you should also dig a little deeper and see, can I build a business case to actually move this farther up the product roadmap? So not only will you, but I love getting the customer involved and getting some skin in the game. But you could actually have an outsized impact by doing some analysis and digging deeper, and put yourself in an even better position from a trusted advisor relationship with this customer, whether you are in support or you're in success or whatever customer facing role you are. Hey, I helped move that up the priority list, and that paints you to them as an advocate and as a trusted advisor. Anybody else have anything that they want to add? Awesome. Gavin, can you hit the done button on that question? Thank you, Bruno. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you for the question. Let me refresh this really quick. All right. Our next question comes from Alexander. Alexander asks, I think it's interesting how a CSM will start at a company and be assigned 30, 50 customers as a book of business. In my opinion, that flies in the face of spending quality time with your customers to perform exceptional service, along with having regular human touch points with them. For the panel, what is the sweet spot in your mind for quantity of customers assigned to a CSM? So this is a little kind of off the topic, but seems like it should be a quick answer. From my perspective, it depends. So there's my answer for you, Alexander. Marissa, Gavin, Bukola, do you have something you can share with Alexander on this one?
Yeah, you kind of took it from me, Andrew, but true consulting fashion, it depends. I know that there's like the rule of thumb of 2 million per. I don't know that matters anymore. I think what really is important when considering this is to figure out what the goals are of the CSM. Who's setting the expectation of human touch points? Do the customers demand that, or are you creating that expectation of QBRs to give them status that they don't really engage with, right? Like, what is the expectation of that customer, and what does quality look like to them? And then the other thing is the tooling that is surrounding and supporting that CSM. If you're a CSM who's out there fighting the fight with a fire hydrant and that's it, and a hose, like, you're going to need a lot fewer customers in your book. But if you have some of the tools that are incredible now, I mean, there's so much out there. I know I referenced AI earlier, but there's so much available to our CS teams. And then lastly is the flexibility of your company, right? Like, I think that if you are a CSM at a company that's highly structured, it makes a difference versus if you're at a company that's a little bit more flexible, so that when you do maybe have a larger book of business, you can tap on marketing's shoulder and say, hey, I'm seeing this, I need this, can you help me get this out the door for my customers so that they can have XYZ experience? That's a big difference than if you have to wait 6 months to get off a backlog of the marketing queue to get a product one pager done for your customers. And that's not a bad thing. Again, I mentioned I worked at Adobe. Like, we had a long queue at our marketing team to get on a topic for a webinar even. So it just makes a big difference. But there are some big considerations to be able to decide what makes the most sense for your company. First and foremost being, what are the customers' expectations of their CSMs?
I love that. I want to add one thing to that list: segmentation. Right? While we want to treat all of our customers with the same level of respect, we're going to treat our customers differently. I'm going to treat and provide a service level to $1,000 customer very different than to a $100,000 customer. That's just the reality. Bukola, Gavin, anything to add to Alexander's question?
Yeah, I think you already said what I wanted to add. Segmentation, it's very important. Like, I have key account managers for specific customers. I don't really care about the quantity of customers. I care more about the quality they are putting out, the value of their response, because we deal with money, yeah, and people don't joke with their money. So, like, I'm only after the quality of service they are rendering to the customers. And then when it's time, like Marissa also said, when it's time and we have the flexibility and the structure enough to start saying, okay, one CSM to 50 customers, then we'll do that. But right now, I think it's just based on the company you are on, and then you can just segment them. Okay, these are my HNIs and these are the other customers. Very simple.
Yeah. Awesome. Alexander, thank you for the question, and thanks for joining us. Our next question comes from Erica. Erica, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us. Erica, Erica asks, what's the best way to get the whole company buy-in to making client success the forefront for every department, the forefront thought for every department, especially when the highest level leadership only wants to focus on sales? And it looks like Marissa wants to jump in on this.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to back to back, but I have a lot of hot takes on this answer. So I'd say first and foremost, again, is asking yourself, not only why does customer success need to be at the forefront, but what does that look like? What is your definition of success for that? And is it realistic? Unfortunately, every team is going to have their own goals to some expectation. They're going to have their own projects and their own milestones. It just is. And turning a cruise ship is hard, right? And we're all on a bit of our own cruise ship right now. We're not in kayaks. It's not going to change overnight. And so what are those small incremental wins that would really help teams get more excited and involved and customer first in their thinking, and setting up those milestones along the way? And then how can you as an individual contributor start contributing to that, underground effort to get this to happen? So maybe bringing a product person who's a friend of yours to a call with a customer so that they can hear directly what's going on, or bring marketing with you, or just bring other teams to customer calls. Customers, especially happy ones and also frustrated ones, love an audience. They love to meet other people as long as those other people have something to contribute to the call. Or on the flip side, send a Gong recording, if you're using Gong or whatever the recording product is, to those other teams so that they can be a part of the solutioning with you, with those customers. They can become part of that conversation as well. And then on the flip side of that, I'd say is incentives. If you can help influence your leadership team, or you as a leader can help influence the decision makers around incentives, the better. I know, Andrew, you mentioned NPS as a part of everyone's comp. We focus really hard on retention and overall net retention of our customer base. So where are we growing our current customers? Where are we saving our current customers? And then also, where's sales contributing to that? Everyone wins when you have high retention, because that means you had a good year. That means that the board is happy, right? You're doing well. And so the more you can get teams across the entire company incentivized behind the metrics that are really driving what it is to have a good customer experience, I think the better off you are. So that's kind of the underground from the bottoms up, and then the top down.
I love that. One of the tools that we used to use, we would have quarterly, when I say we, we have a very small company now, so everybody knows what's going on in all of our customer accounts. But back in the day when I was working, especially in Silicon Valley, most of the companies that I worked for or worked with would have quarterly all hands meetings, and we would have a customer show up either in person or virtually, spend 15 minutes talking about how what we do is affecting your business. Another great way to inject some empathetic thinking in everybody's mindset.
I have one more. Can I chip
Yes.
in? I think, and it's something that we personally do at my company. For everybody that joins the company from the onboarding stage, you have to go through the customer success. So you join us for a day. We just call it you learn everything, what we do. You learn about how we attend to the customers and how what we do affects the product and the company as a whole. So that one day during your onboarding process, you spend it with customer success team. And then
I love that. We actually had anybody who hired at one company I was working with, anybody that they hired to the customer success team spent their first 3 months in customer support. Actually, yeah. It's a great practice. Gavin, you got anything to add?
Nothing that wouldn't be piggybacking on what everybody else has already said. So
Awesome. Erica, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you again. Marissa, if you could hit the done button. Just as a reminder, we go until quarter past the hour, so we'll continue to answer questions here for another 10 to 12 minutes. So stick around. Let's see. Next question comes from Elizabeth. Elizabeth asks, hi, do you have suggestions on being empathetic without getting too emotionally involved to the level of unprofessional? Advocating for your customer is different than becoming as frustrated as a customer. I had a CSM who got too involved and was a learning experience for them. Yeah. Anybody? That's I mean that from at least from my experience, it just requires a lot of one-on-one coaching with that individual and reminding them that they work for the company. While respecting their passion for customer success. But anybody have any suggestions for Elizabeth?
I do have one, but I think Gavin wanted to respond. Should I go first or should Gavin go?
Go ahead, Bukola. You
Okay,
spoke up first. It's all you.
I think it's very important for CSM to understand that as much as we want to give the customers a floor to feel heard, we understand their frustration, but we do not absorb them. That's just it. It's very simple. So you need to explain to the CSM, like, yes, listen to your customers, try to prefer solutions to them, but do not absorb whatever emotion the customer is feeling. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really fine line to kind of dance around sometimes with customers, especially when this is happening for one of your company's biggest customers. That's not just taking support and success team to the red line and beyond, but they're actually taking the product to the red line and beyond. So in some cases, former company, it was a fantastic best practice to make sure to advocate on feedback from this customer as much as possible. But at the same time, we have to remember, hey, like you were saying, Andrew, you work for, Acme Core and not necessarily for your customer. So it definitely does take a lot of coaching, a lot of one-on-one.
Yes, it's a lot of coaching. There's a fine balance.
Yes.
And maybe that coaching takes it takes the form of, if you do record calls, right? You're sitting down with that customer success manager and you're going through that call together. And you're saying, okay, here's where you probably need to tone it down. Here's where you can't get sucked in to this aspect of it. So, Marissa, you got anything to add?
Yes. I would say the only other thing is recognizing our strengths, I think, is super important in the professional space. And I'm a big fan of strengths-based leadership. And some people are very passionate and they are going to get sucked in. And it is very hard to overcome our opportunities to become strengths, right? And so at times, I'm very fortunate that I have a team that has a lot of diverse strengths. And one of my team members is one of the calmest people I've ever met. And she is amazing at calming other people. And she's willing to do it, which is like just the trifecta of amazing. But what we've been able to do is actually reassign some accounts to her, knowing that they can be a little noisy and they can be a little explosive, because we know that she can handle it with grace and she can diffuse the situation better than another CSM we have who's incredible, but very process oriented and wants to like focus on the answer and get it done and like just do that. He's so good at that. And so we've shuffled accounts around as we've gotten to know customers, gotten to know each other, gotten to know strengths, to really align that in a way that makes everyone successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Play on people's strengths. But my hope would be that, that you can do enough coaching with somebody to not have them go down that road, because it's dangerous, right? Because if they're doing it with one customer, they're probably doing it with all those customers. So, all right, let's see. Our next question as my freaking gardener is right outside my window. Hopefully you can't hear that too badly. Next question comes from M. Dudley. M asks, are there any KPIs your organizations measure to calculate the empathy / emotional intelligence of your team? I don't know if is there a KPI for that? I haven't come across one. Have any of you all come across one?
I think a lot of the KPIs
more subjective than objective, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think all customer experience KPIs are lagging indicators of this to some extent, though.
Yeah.
Right. Leading indicators of empathy can be probably pretty hard to calculate. We found a lot of success with our CSAT. So after a customer has an experience with our support team, they provide that CSAT score and often provide qualitative information. And so again, very lucky we have AI that can assess and review all of those written responses in a way that really helps us see the trends. And we see the empathetic associates kind of popping out really easily and effectively. But at the end of the day, if a customer is happy and healthy and staying, I think that's a really good indication that you have an empathetic team who's supporting their customers well.
Yeah.
I have found and I don't know if Gong has this, but with update.ai, they do have a sentiment analysis engine that measures, based off of conversation, what it thinks the customer sentiment is. I think it's similar to what you're asking. It is a little more on the leading side of it, but I agree with you, Marissa. There's not a whole lot of KPIs that are going to be leading indicators of whether or not your team is empathetic or not.
I'm going to have to beg ignorance on this a little bit, but I have heard of KPI like sentiment shift tracking, time to emotional resolution, and re-escalation rates have been leveraged as other forms of leading indicators. I can't sign off on wholesale, but it's definitely something that's mindful for me that I want to look into more and see if this might actually help.
Makes sense. Okay. All right, let's move on to our next. Bukola, you got anything? Or are we good?
No, everything Marissa said, definitely. I'm also going to look into what Gavin just said because that's very interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, thanks for the question. Our next question comes from, we got to probably get through another one or two here. Let's reorder this. Oh yeah, here we go. Another question from M. Dudley. This is for Bukola. How do your customer success agents deal with their empathy, emotional training? I can't imagine a topic more sensitive to customers than managing their money. I know how crazy I am when I have to call my banking system. And Bukola, looks like you're going to go ahead and answer this one live. So what have you got for M. Dudley?
So we just have quarterly trainings where we talk about empathy, we talk about building trust and loyalty with our customers. We also just have like one-on-one sessions just to make sure everybody is aware of the mission and we're still on track. And the one thing I tend to inform my team to take note of is active listening. It's enough that, we listen to the customers or read their messages, but there's always a tone behind every message is what I tell my team. You don't necessarily need to wait till when you're on the call for you to realize that there is a tone. You could be reading a message, not even in caps, but just a message, and there is a tone there. So you need to practice active listening, and it's something we talk about. Understand your customer's body language, understand every little cue there is when you're interacting with your customers, and make sure they feel heard. Because a lot of the time, what we've realized when it comes to money is these customers want to feel heard. Once they feel heard, communicate effectively to them, and we're fine. And it's something we keep emphasizing on my team.
I love that. Love that. Awesome. Anybody else have anything to add? Are we good? Awesome. Thank you, Bukola. Hit the done button on that one. Let's see here. Let's see. We got time for probably 2 more questions. The first one I want to ask from Erica, because Marissa, you want to jump in on this. I heard a stat that only 1 out of 26 unhappy clients complain, the rest just churn. What is the best way to get those unhappy clients to give feedback besides just NPS? And I am interested in hearing your answer to this question as well, which is why I'm the one that complains, by the way. And in my case of American Home Warranty, I complained and churned. But what is the best way to get those unhappy clients to give you feedback?
Well, I would respond by saying and questioning the premise in itself, which is, why do they need to do anything? Why can't we as a company and we as a team figure it out proactively? What information do we already have? Because we just reflected earlier and said one of the biggest frustrations is having to repeat yourself. So if a customer has a frustrating situation, why are we then asking them to tell us about it some more? And where can we find and suss out those different details and maybe proactively identify it? And there's a few ways to do that. So for one, like I mentioned, my company provides communication tools. We have sentiment analysis built in. You can start seeing when the sentiment goes down in a very trend-worthy way on calls or video calls, et cetera. You can also just look at past churned customers and see what happened that 3 months before they churned, that 6 months before they churned, and then set up proactive alerts on the account so that when you see that behavior 3 to 6 months before that renewal or ever during that life cycle, you can see it and you can get ahead of it and talk to the customer and learn what's going on with them, build that trust, get that transparency to proactively get ahead of it.
Reactive proactivity, I like to call it. Yeah, love that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I might add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
As a success professional, if you build out an actively managed success plan, like we were talking earlier, environment and everything, initiatives, you set goals from the outset every quarter. You revisit those goals. So you show not just the champions of the cause, the goals that they've attained, but you have the executives who are signing the checks in and seeing how much is being done. Now, once you get to that 6-month check-in, after the second quarter, you then ask the pointed question. Let's role play for a little bit here and pretend that tomorrow is the day that your contract renews. Give me a grade, A to F. How do you feel about that? How would you feel about this contract renewing tomorrow? And if they give you a grade anything less than a C, really, you should be asking, well, why? And then asking more questions. Why is it not that great a score? And then what will it take for us to right the ship? What can we do? Obviously, we might not be able to change price or negotiate pricing, but there have to be other things outside of the box thinking that we can do to help make this situation better for the customer.
But you got to be having that. You got to be having that discussion 6 months in to a 1-year contract. You got to be having that discussion 90 days in
Absolutely.
to a 1. You should always be. There's something we teach in our value-based selling course called the 3 whys. Why did you change? Why now is this the time for you to, or was that the time for you to make that change? And why did you go? Why did you begin to do business with us? Yep. And you need to be constantly, are we meeting the expectations for that why us piece? Are we doing that? Are we meeting it on a regular basis? Because if we're meeting it and hopefully exceeding it, then we probably don't have a problem. But if we're not, I need to understand why. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We're at the end of our time for today. We've reached the end of today's session. I want to thank our guests for sharing their valuable insights and experiences. Your contributions make these discussions truly meaningful for our community. To our audience, thank you for your active participation. We got through a lot of questions today, so definitely appreciate you showing up. Share your thoughts about today's session on LinkedIn by tagging myself, our guests, or Success Hacker or Success Coach, and we'd love to hear your takeaways. Mark your calendars for our next CS Mastermind on July 23rd, when we'll explore managing customer escalations. effectively. Finally, let me leave you with this. Great customer-focused individuals know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to find them. And that's why we created this series. Have a great rest of your day and month, and we'll see you in July.